Now, when I think of great years, it's not about what race I ran or how much money that job has brought in. It's about building incredible relationships. I was always very used to doing things on my own. But then there is also an element of loneliness. It's a really strange that you feel great and almost empowered doing these things on your own, but then there's also that inner, but I wish I could do that with someone. I genuinely don't think I could have gone from just the life I had before InnerFight to then being in a full-blown relationship and creating the life that we have now. Running for me was just something I did on my own. I didn't run with anybody. I didn't have a running group in London. I had no coach. And I think that then coming into InnerFight and realising that actually I can do things with people, as it almost slowly then bridged that, okay, I am now in a position where I have a husband and I have a child, and it's a completely different life to what I had 4 years ago. My interaction with InnerFight started by trying one class. I was so proud of myself for doing it, but equally I was terrified. And I'll be honest, shaved reps.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My guest today is Jenny Wilson Hooper, who those of you that spend some time here at InnerFight or in Smith Street Cafe will know very, very well. She is always around, a smiley face, and always ready to have a chat with people. By trade, she is actually a luxury retail professional. She helps people in that space. However, she is a new mother, and that's what we spend a lot of time talking about today, and more her personal journey. We speak all things from loneliness to comfort to conflict and everything in between. And actually, for the first time, share Jenny's story of how she arrived at InnerFight looking for community, and the fact that she has been with us now just over 4 years. She started with one of our projects, Project DXB, and she talks about all the different things and all the important things that community is in her life. This week's show announcements. Yes, there wasn't any last week. I was in Kenya. If you've got some time, head over to my blog, mjdsmith.com, and you can hear about my journey there and why I have this mark across my nose, 2 broken ribs and a lung contusion. Anyway, this week's show announcements are the program here at InnerFight across all our different silos for July, where things are heading. You need to go to Monday's podcast. Yes, I know. Not today's, Monday's podcast. You will hear all about it. All the coaches are on talking about all the different programs. So if you're a little bit confused about what we do, how we do it, why we do it, where we do it, who we do it with, then please go and check out Monday's show, and you will hear about everything that is going on in the building and outside the building in July, with the exception of what happens in New Zealand and Ireland, because they have their own programs, which are separate. I have to put that in. Next weekend kicks off InnerFight Endurance in Chamonix. If you're looking for something to do next weekend, then give Rob Jones a shout. He'll be in Chamonix. He's there for a long time. So anytime over summer you want to go running with Rob Jones in Chamonix, give him a shout. But if you want to join the camp, starts next weekend, rj@innerfight.com. You can roll up. He's got loads of routes. You'll definitely get lost, and he'll definitely show you where to buy a nice coffee and hopefully a good croissant. Hell Week is done. Congratulations to everyone who got through Hell Week. We are gathering all the names, verifying everything, and soon we'll have a new board in the Hall of Fame. Hell Week this week was, I don't know, was it the hardest we've done? It could have been. It was pretty tough. The first 2 days were horrendous, that's for sure. Wednesday got a little bit easier before we ramped it up again Thursday, Friday. But congratulations to everyone who made it through Hell Week. We shall see Hell and its week and its workouts hopefully one more time before the end of the year. Whoops, is that a little clue? Let's see. Those of you that are interested in LRC, Ladies Run Club moves online for summer, 7-week program, which is available to anyone around the world. The ladies are still, if you're in Dubai, are still welcome to come to all of our group sessions. However, the Monday and Wednesdays session for Ladies Run Club just have a couple left and then they are on pause and the whole program goes online for summer. 7 weeks of running. You can take anywhere. You can do it anywhere that you wish. Give Steph a shout, sh@innerfight.com, and she'll let you know all about it. That's it for this week's show announcements. Let's get into the show. This is episode 916 of the InnerFight podcast. Let's get into today's show. Jenny, what is the best thing about being a mother?
The unconditional love.
Really?
The feeling needed. Someone is depending on you, someone needs you, someone loves you unconditionally.
Wow.
It sounds a bit corny. You know, you get told it so many times by people before you have a child. And you go, yeah, okay. But actually, particularly over the last 2 weeks, I've had a couple of roadblocks, a couple of difficult situations to deal with. And you know what? I then look at her and I think, you know what? That stuff doesn't matter. It really, really doesn't matter. It's definitely that not sweating the stuff that has really got under my skin in the past. I look at her and I think, gosh, it took a journey to bring you into this world, and I've got you.
It's amazing.
And that's it.
Is it what you thought it was going to be? Did you have any sort of preconceptions?
It's a difficult question because I think at the moment we're probably still in a little bit of the honeymoon phase with her where she is sleeping well, which when people ask and, how's the sleep going? It's actually not too bad. I think we're having to think to ourselves, okay, in time, this could get pretty wild. At the moment, I guess it is what we expected, probably better in some ways. I think I maybe was expecting it to be even harder. But the first 2 weeks for me were extremely difficult and I had to put my hands up and ask for help.
Yeah.
And since then, having the help that I need through medication, through seeing a therapist, I feel a lot happier. I feel a lot more in control of the situation. That's one of the hardest things really, is just, I think the first 2 weeks just feeling very much out of my depth.
Control is an interesting one, isn't it? Yeah. For human beings. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about control?
I find that a very difficult thing to manage. Always have.
Yeah.
Always have. I think whether it be being in control of being in the career that I want to be in, financial control, control of friendships, relationships, the control of being able to have a child when you want to have a child. And for me, the not knowing has always been a very, very difficult thing to deal with. Letting go of things and not having that control. When Aurora was born, because she was born a month early, my maternity leave started early. I hadn't done my handovers. I still had meetings to do.
We hadn't recorded this podcast. We were supposed to record this before she was born, hey?
That's right. We were supposed to record it on the 21st. Yeah. And you sent me a message that very morning on the 13th of March saying, do you want to do the 21st? And I hadn't replied back to you. And then I remember that afternoon saying, we'll have to postpone the 21st because she's coming today.
She's coming today. I'm like, oh, okay.
That for me was really hard, having the doctor say to me, she's in distress. We need to deliver her this afternoon. For me, the first thing is I've not packed my hospital bag. I've not finished work yet. I have a meeting online for London in 30 minutes. I've not done my handovers. I've not had my last evening with my husband to enjoy our time as a two before she arrives, because she was scheduled for a C-section. And I remember telling friends, I'm okay with this because it's the one part of the pregnancy I've had a bit of control over, because I know when she's coming. So the day before, we're going to have a nice dinner and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. So then having that taken away from you 2 weeks early and her arrive a month early, everything's out of control. And I think that what she is teaching me is trying to allow myself to, I don't have to be in control all the time, and I can't, it's impossible. But I've always been that person that I need the control.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because if you think about what you said initially, you come home, anything could have happened that day, and you see your daughter, she's there, and nothing else now matters. You've tapped into that, but now we're talking about control and how it can be paralyzing at times. So it's crazy. It's like a conflict, but it's also quite beautiful, because it's like there's almost something that's come between this conflict that's actually making, I hope, making it better.
Definitely. I think her just, I see what you're saying. I think there is a bit of a sort of that juxtaposition of me looking at her and thinking everything's fine, but then equally that idea of control.
Yeah.
I don't know, losing train of thought now.
No, it's, where do you think, because I think a lot of people suffer from the feeling of lack of control. And some people like surprises and others don't.
Yeah.
Like, I'm hands down, like, if you, and that's why you've never seen it here at the company, in the gym, like, don't give me it's not because I'm not a fun guy that I don't want a birthday cake on my birthday, but I don't want to walk in a room and everyone go, ah! Like, it's not for me at all, right? Yeah. And I often, yeah, you can see it, right? I've
got a story now, but yeah, okay.
And I often think, like, okay, why don't I want that?
Yeah.
Because we all like to see other people be happy. And I know that would make some of the people happy, because some of the team told me years ago, like, boss, we really want to do this for you. And I'm like, yeah, but we're going to enjoy it. So there's this constant thing. And then it's like, holy shit, is it because I'm not in control? Is it like, because I don't like surprises? Is it because I'm not ready? Is it, you know, and it's such an control is just an interesting topic.
But is it also that example, you don't like the idea of all eyes being on you without you knowing in advance that that's going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting...
Because if I think that when I've lectured in the UK, I can lecture to 100, 150 people, but I'm prepared and I know it's going to happen. But if I was to walk into a room and it was a surprise thing like you described, if I hadn't known about it, for me, I would struggle with that, because for me, but I didn't know about it before and I want to be prepared and I want to just, again, it's a bit of planning.
So let me ask you a question. You have an ability to deliver a lecture on a topic to 150 people that we've booked in advance. You feel great about it.
Yeah.
And you smash it out the park.
Yeah.
And you're confident, you're comfortable.
Yeah, I love it.
Love it.
Love it. Yeah.
What if tomorrow morning you're sat in Smith Street, like you are most days, and I appreciate that, and everyone who's there also have to give you your appreciation, of course. And I'm like, Jenny, I've got 50 people in the studio, and the lecture that you delivered last week, I need you to do it in 3 minutes. How do you feel?
Oh, but okay. Well, first question is, how long did the lecture take the week before? An hour?
You've done an hour, for example.
And you're wanting me to do it in 3 minutes?
No, in 3 minutes time.
Oh, in 3 minutes
You're
time,
going to start in 3 minutes time,
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, okay.
So all I'm asking you to do, essentially, is...
Repeat what I did last week.
Repeat what you did, and you absolutely smashed it out of the park.
That's fine.
That's fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fine. I would love that.
So it's not...
When are we doing it?
Yeah, literally. It's not the people and the unknown of that situation, because you're prepared for it. You've got the slides on your laptop.
Yeah, I think it's more things like there's almost a thing about people putting in effort for me that I get a bit funny about.
Right.
Like, an example being when before Aurora was born, I messaged a friend and said, listen, just want to have a few people around to the house. Danny's going to barbecue. Just want it to be super cash. Like, we'll do the food. And she said, like, absolutely not. Like, I will arrange it. But for me, that gives me the initial, that whole idea of a WhatsApp group being created with the title Jenny's Baby Shower gives me utter fear. Because I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea of a whole WhatsApp group talking about what they're going to do for me, and also how much it's going to cost, and using up people's time, and that really.
You're in the WhatsApp group, or you're not?
No, I'm not.
So you would be outside it.
I'm outside it.
In this scenario,
I'm outside it. But again, for me, I think no, I would have much preferred like. I had a wonderful time, and I will just put that out there because a lot of people from InnerFight came. But for me, it was much easier to say, no, just come around ours. We'll do a barbecue. It can be very chilled. Does that make sense?
Is it that maybe we're helping each other, maybe we're not, and maybe we're confusing the people listening, maybe we're confusing each other. But is it, because it's very similar to what we're saying, right? And so is it that we're afraid because we've lost control, or is it that we don't want people to fuss over us?
I think it's a mixture of both.
Yeah, right.
I think it's a mixture of both, because I think that for example, Christmas time, I love presents that are given to me. I really appreciate them. I love the thought that's put into receiving a gift from somebody. But I have always enjoyed, more than any other part, the Christmas dinner, me getting presents, is seeing my family open what I got them. That for me is the most exciting part. Oh. Because I have put in the time to think about what they'd really like, and I'm just desperate for them to open the gift from me. And I feel bad in a way that I'm not desperate to open the gifts from them. That sounds terrible.
So you're more excited about me opening a gift that you've given me than you opening any 10 gifts?
Yeah.
Wow.
Definitely, because for me, it's like, I can't wait to see the look on their face. And, I hope they're going to like that. And it just really fires me up.
Yeah.
And the gift from them is lovely. And, but But is that a sense of control? Because I know what they're. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think some of it.
I think about it a lot. I think, but then when we read a lot on getting your life in order, what's the first thing? Like, let's get some control back.
Yeah.
Like what do we say when we're having a meltdown? My life is out of fucking control.
Yeah.
So then it's like we want and. Yeah. And I look at myself, like I wanted to take control of my destiny. So I left from a comfortable job and I controlled what I did so that I can do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
From a lot of your work, you also go in the way that you want to go.
Yes. I think that for me, when things get really difficult, I need to regain a bit more control.
Yeah.
I came to a crossroads in 2019. Do I stay in Dubai? Do I leave? And if I stay, I have to find something that will give me structure, that will give me community, that will allow me to actually have a bit of a life here. And then That is how we're sitting here to this day.
It is. It's actually interesting because I was reflecting on what we might discuss, and I'll never forget we sat in 2019 in Raw after Dubai Marathon, basically.
Yeah, so it would have been early 2020.
It would have been early 2020.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
Dubai Marathon,
yes.
2020. Exactly.
Do you remember what happened in Raw?
Specifically?
I was sitting there. You were sitting on the other side of Raw. You thought I was late. I thought you were late.
That's exactly. And neither of us were late. Yeah, that's right, wasn't it? Yeah, but it's interesting because it's quite big, isn't it?
Because I was thinking, have I gone and mocked this up? And I specifically got there early, and then I looked across and I saw you, and I thought, right, we've both got here early. We both think the other one's late. This is gonna start well.
I did. Talk to us about that. Not really about, we know what you've done in InnerFight, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit, but that decision that you took, that conscious decision about, I need community.
Yeah. I was back home in Scotland at the time. I remember having a bit of a reassessment in 2019, you know, what am I going to do? Will I stay? Will I go? I hadn't been well that year, as many people within the community do know about. Had a massive dip in my mental health. And I'd seen InnerFight on social media, but it quite frankly had terrified me. Well, actually, no, I'm going to go back a bit further. Earlier on in the year, I had done one class. My interaction with InnerFight started by trying one class, and I was so proud of myself for doing it, but equally I was terrified. And I'll be honest, shaved reps.
Brilliant.
I was like, yep, I've done that. Yep. And I remember just getting home thinking, well, I'm really proud of myself for doing this, but equally, I don't know if I can go back. I'm not sure, but I wanted to. It's almost like you touch the fire. You're like, oh, but I want to do it. And I wanted to come back, but I didn't know in what capacity. I also looked at Track Tuesday on social media. That would be amazing, but I'm not fast. There was always this, but I'm not this, or I'm not that. And then fast forward to later on in the year in Scotland, and then that post came up for Project DXB. That for me was just, it was, I still remember I was sitting in the kitchen at my mum and dad's, and I just remember looking at this and thinking, this is what I need to apply for. This could be my, it reminds me in a way of when you want to buy into a luxury brand, but you don't have the money to buy the Hermes bag, but you want the keychain. But you buy the keychain. It was the almost, well, this is an accessible way for me to be part of a community, because before I thought, well, but I'm not a CrossFit athlete and I'm not super fast at running. I did have a preconception of how I could become part of it. Yeah. Which is incredible now when people do think of joining InnerFight, and I'm thinking, for heaven's sakes, this is for everyone. But that decision that application form, that application form for me was very much you need to give me a place and I need to join this program now. And it was very much if I don't get in, I genuinely think I will leave Dubai and go home.
Why did you know so badly that, like, what came together that you just knew that you needed to be part of a community? Because
I am such a people person, but if I'm not in the right group of people, that's when my mental health issues have always stemmed from poor relationships, whether it be poor working relationships, poor personal relationships. It's always been about relationships. And if I'm in a position where I'm in a good environment with good relationships, for example, I'm very fortunate to look back on my school years as some of the best years of my entire life, because I had incredible friends, an amazing, nurturing environment. I loved it. But then at university, I did have some very good friends, but there were a lot of other factors in that environment which made it very difficult. So for me, as an outsider, I looked at InnerFight and these people look genuine. These people look like people that I would love to be part of. I really would love to. I remember doing the first class at the old gym off the back of seeing one of your coaches, an old coach, seeing her in Tom and Serge.
Wow.
And I went up to her and said, "Hi, I'm not part of InnerFight. Can you tell me a little bit about it? I'm really nervous to go. Like, could I come?" And that was...
I actually don't know this story.
Oh, do you know?
No.
Yeah, it was Amanda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because at the time, look, from me coming to Dubai in 2017, I had a few friends. I was introduced to a few friends of friends, but I didn't have a real community of people that I felt that I want to be with day on day. I did feel very lonely, and that, if anyone who does listen to this who I knew from 2017, they may find that a bit sad, thinking, oh well, was I not a good enough friend? Of course you were, but for me it still didn't compare to the really good times in my life where I have had a lot of good people around me.
Loneliness is interesting, isn't it? Because the word loneliness is like, it's a tough word. And it's about being alone and not having connection with people and not having community and not having social stimulus. But also when we flip it, it's like, we need to be alone sometimes.
Yeah.
We need to have space.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that's quite contrasting, isn't it?
Very much, and that's just interesting. You say that because I remember when Danny and I first got together, and then he came and moved in with me here in Dubai. I initially found that really difficult. I'd never lived with a guy before at the age of 36 or so. Never lived with a guy before. We were one bedroom, small space, and
some cats.
Yeah, exactly. Cats, and and it did. There was one day that he overheard me saying to a friend online, "I miss having space." And I got off the call and he said, "I heard what you said." And that afternoon we actually had a long talk about it, and we, because we just aired everything. And I said, I think what I was trying to say was that I have spent so many years across living in Scotland, living in London, moving to Dubai. I have done a lot on my own. I have no issue eating in restaurants on my own. I have no issue flying on up until the point I met Dan, I'd taken more flights in my life on my own than with people. I was used to doing things on my own. I would go to other countries to run half marathons because it was something to work towards and do. And I would sometimes go with people or I would meet people there, but is it to fill a gap that you don't have a partner yet or you don't have children yet? I don't know, but I was always very used to doing things on my own. But then there's an element of control of that, but then there is also an element of loneliness. It's a really strange feeling of that you feel great and almost empowered doing these things on your own. But then there's also that inner, but I wish I could do that with someone.
And that's natural as well, right? Because we're a species that's made to be with others, to have conversations like this, to have relationships, to be, but it's...
And I think InnerFight in a way was almost like a bit of a conduit from being very, very doing everything. Like a lot of my like sporting activity, running for me was just something I did on my own. I didn't run with anybody. I didn't have a running group in London. I had no coach. Running for me was on my own. When I was in the gym, I was on my own. And I think that then coming into InnerFight and realizing that actually I can do things with people, that I think has helped me in then building that relationship with Danny, because it almost slowly then bridged that, okay, I am now in a position where I have a husband and I have a child, and it's a completely different life to what I had 4 years ago. I genuinely don't think I could have gone from just the life I had before InnerFight to then being in a full-blown relationship and creating the life that we have now. Definitely not.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And feel free not to answer this, but the transition from a lot of time alone to this guy catching a one-way flight here in literally the depths of COVID.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty nuts. Obviously, it's beautiful. 4 years later, we have a daughter and, you know, and this. But if we think about it in that moment, and I think I've told you, like, when I heard, like, I was like, oh, yeah.
Do you remember that day after the coffee run when you and Tom were at a table in Surf House?
Right.
And I remember just like, hey guys, how are you? And then one of you said, so I hear Danny's I hear your man's coming across. And I said, yeah, he's arriving on July 18th. And you're like, so he's booked a one-way ticket? Yeah. Okay. Good luck with that.
Just going, but it's not like it's all these different bits and pieces, isn't it? It's like community, connection, loneliness.
Yeah.
And that time that you've been together.
Yeah.
That time that you've been alone and now you're going to be together non-stop without really, I mean, the exit is easy. You give him an Uber to the airport, like within 24 hours, or like he's still going 4.5 years later or 4 years later. It's coming now, 4 years. When this show goes out, it's basically 4 years almost to the day. Yeah. How does that, like, how did you feel?
It's mad. I think for me, it really was, I look back at it all and think, wow, I can't believe that happened, and I can't believe that both of us did take that risk. But I do think that both of us had our separate situations in that we both agreed we've got nothing to lose. I think I had it first. Well, I know I had it first because I made the suggestion to him. I said, well, why don't you just come over? Danny had quit his job after being in the same company for 20 years in England. Then COVID hit. So he left his job at a very poor time, and was in Kent and had no plan. And I said, we genuinely have nothing to lose. You can get on a plane. We're never going to know if this is going to work by continuing this. We'd Zoomed every day for 4 months. And I said to Holly the other day...
That's intense, Jenny.
I was talking about it with Holly yesterday.
My heart rate's just gone up. I'm finding that hard to digest. Wow.
But I was talking about it with Holly yesterday, and she said, well, what did you talk about? And I said, no, but sometimes we would do things like, okay, you have an early dinner, I have a late dinner, so we combine the times, and we would cook. But we wouldn't talk. We'd be like, right, we're going to make this pasta dish. You make it, I make it. you're on Zoom, you do the cooking, and then you sit down and you have dinner like you would with your partner, and you might say a couple of words and that's it. We would we would sometimes watch a movie. We would go 1, 2, 3, play. No, you've played it at the wrong time. No, start again. 1, 2, 3, play. We would watch series. And so it wasn't every day of intense, what are you doing today? It was trying to almost, okay, let's try and do daily.
This is going to be such an amazing story for Aurora when she's like if Danny tells this at her 21st, I can visualize it. Or send me a recording. Or maybe I'll zoom in.
It's and I think the thing was that neither of us had that experience before. It was very much, it was based on 4 months of seeing people at their high and their low. I mean, there were a couple of times, for example, that Danny didn't log on. And then we get in a fight, and then I find out it's because he's had a really bad day and he doesn't want to log on. And then we talk about it, and okay, well, but what was the issue? And then other times where I was really struggling. But, bear in mind it was throughout COVID. So then for him to come across, and then you think, well, all we can do is give this a go. And for him, he liked the idea, I persuaded him to give it a go, but also InnerFight was also something for him that he said, oh, well, you seem to be part of this really cool community. Danny, sometimes he will sometimes exercise in groups. He'll sometimes go in through phases of exercising on his own. But ultimately, even if it is having periods of time that he just is in the cafe, like he does right now, takes Aurora up there at 6 a.m. most mornings, sees the same people. That's actually quite a nice close extension of what he had in Kent, a very close bubble. And I think that what it's done for both of us, it's done a lot for both of us, but in very different ways in some respects. For me, it's definitely, it's pushed me to do a lot of things with people. It's allowed me to properly try CrossFit. It allowed me to do a crazy 12.5-hour overnight row. If someone had said to me a few years prior, oh, that building there, you'll be in there overnight, rowing 125 kilometers. But it's I think for both of us, it's there's been a lot of so many highs that we've ticked off as, gosh, what an experience that was and how mad that was. And we've been part of it together, whether it's been me supporting him, running Abu Dhabi Marathon, him supporting me, running around a track for 12 hours mindlessly. Yeah, it's interesting if he didn't take that flight. Yeah, exactly. Then it's. But there's a lot of what ifs to that. It's if he hadn't traveled to South Africa after quitting his job, he would not have stayed with the people who put us in touch. What do you think about stuff like that? Like, things line up in certain ways. I met my wife Holly on a flight. We were talking about that yesterday too. She said that you slept beautifully. Yeah, she still does. Imagine 21 years later, she's still telling the same story, and I actually look good in the story. I'm like, keep going. She said if you snored, it would have been a deal breaker. Yeah. It's tough that. So, but yeah, I mean, do you think that? Because some people love the whole everything happens for a reason. I'm definitely one of them because I believe it does. Some people find it quite cliched. I know you think about things on more than just a superficial level, and I'm sure you spent time, and to be honest, that's what we had such a good conversation in Raw that day. Yeah. We really did. And I know that some of the stuff you told me was quite hard to talk about. Yeah. And,
I actually said to someone, yeah, I'm going to meet Jenny in Raw. And someone went, Project DXB Jenny. And I can't remember who it was. And they just looked at me and they went, oh yeah. I went, yeah.
Oh.
You know, and so you think on a deeper level.
Yeah.
And so you must think sometimes, why did this?
Yeah. Oh, it's mad. Like, because I also remember, like, you did a talk just after your 30-30. And I remember coming up to you and saying, really nice to meet you. You know, I've loved watching it on social media because just before 30-30, I tore a disc in my back. So I've not been able to run. I had fully intended on doing this 30-30. I was really looking forward to it. And again, Kate gets a second mention. No running. And watching on social media what you guys were doing was awesome, because for me it was like, oh, well, I can kind of be a part of this because I can wake up in the morning and see what route they did today and see who joined him. And so I remember coming up to you and saying, you know, it was awesome, thank you. And it's mind-blowing to now think how many, well, what year was that? Was that 20?
It was 2018.
2018.
So 6 years.
So that was the first time I ever, yeah. So now to think, okay, well, if we were ever to leave Dubai, we will leave at some point.
Sure.
That this place would by far be the hardest part of leaving. We talked about it the other day. I said to Danny, I said, can you imagine never being in this cafe again? And he went, that's just weird. And I said, I know, right? It's weird because this is our life. This is our family. This is our community. Could not imagine it any other way. But if someone had said that to me years ago,
yeah,
and just as you say, just the way, you know, things kind of played out and joining Project DXB and it just took such an interesting path that I do truly believe that things are meant to work out in a certain way, because when I met Danny, I was at a point in my life that it must have been about 3 days before we met. We met in London. I was up in Scotland before then. I said to my parents out on a walk, I said, I've come to the conclusion that I genuinely would be happy being on my own. And that what I would love at some point in my life is to be financially stable so that I can maybe adopt a child and be a mum. I still very much believe that I'm meant to be a mum, but I'm not going to be with the wrong person for the sake of trying to have a child. And they said, well, you know, the main thing for you is to do what makes you happy. And 3 days later, I had this very casual tick boxing impromptu coffee with Dan to purely tick the box of the person that had introduced us. Turned up, casuals, hair bun on top of, you know, head, no makeup on. It was very much, well, I'm going to meet him, tick the box, leave London, go back to Dubai, job done. And then we meet and I think, he's actually quite funny. And like,
hope he listens.
Yeah, and it's, you know, this is okay, yeah. But still just, okay, yeah, cool, let's meet later on in the week, let's take a walk around Covent Garden, let's just, everything was super cash. And, oh yeah, cool, you come across to Dubai for a weekend if you fancy, yeah, you're always welcome. 1 week later, COVID starts. And I think that because it was the first time for me, I'd put no pressure on myself to impress someone, to think about what I was wearing, to think about what I was going to say. I've spent so many years so worried about what people will think when I meet them and going, you know, getting ready to go on a date and, what must I say and what must I not say and what must I dress like and what are they going to, how will I speak or dress so that they will like me? But with Danny, it was very, well, I'm done. What you see is what you get. And if he doesn't like it, then I'm afraid...
You're still getting on that plane back to Dubai in
Absolutely,
a few hours.
absolutely. And that, I think, for me was... I feel that whether it's a universe, a God, or whatever, I do truly believe there was something that was well done. You finally got your shit together and you've got the right mindset. I'll reward you. There's Danny. I know that sounds a little bit weird. But
I don't think, to me it doesn't. Maybe to some people it does, because you said something that I was going to pick up on, that you'd said to your parents, you'll be okay to be alone, or to not to meet someone. That's an easy thing to say, but to get there and actually to be comfortable with that, there's a certain amount of acceptance. And with acceptance also comes a lot relaxation. Because acceptance is the final stage of grief. We know it. When you actually accept the problem, when you've gone through the anger, the denial, the depression, the bargaining, we get to the acceptance. And then we're relaxed. You're not relaxed when you're arguing with someone, or when you're depressed, or when you're relaxed in acceptance. So and that's why the people that argue against the everything happens for a reason phrase, stroke cliche, stroke call it whatever you want, although I still believe it, they try often to piece things together like this. So it's almost like you had a point of acceptance a few days before you met Danny. Yes, to you were just Jenny, but you were relaxed and in your purest form.
Definitely. It was, if I think back, it was not long after the Dubai marathon. So it was that time. I think I'd ran the marathon, and I remember just thinking like...
Yeah, it must have been close. Huh?
Yeah. It was around about February, February time. And I remember just coming home for a few days, because it was the last time I was in Scotland before COVID.
Yeah.
And obviously, I'd had that experience with Project DXB, and you're so right. It was that element of acceptance of, I have had the worst year of my life, but do you know what? I have come out of it, and I have taken a lot of time to really try and understand myself better. And actually, I am going to be okay. And it was something that when I was at home, when I had been very unwell, and I was having some therapy, and the therapist asked me, can you go through, since leaving school, can you tell me all the years that you've had a really great year? I gave her 1 year. I said to her that the year 2016 was a fantastic year because I ran London Marathon, I taught in China, I taught in Spain. It was a list of sort of all of these achievements. But any other year, no, not really. And I came home and told my parents that, and my dad didn't cry, but he looked so upset, and he said, I genuinely didn't realize just how unhappy you have been over these years from leaving school to this age. And it all boiled down to environment and relationships, and being in the wrong relationships, wrong places, and you mull over all of that, and then now I think, my goodness, from 2020, every year has had this. There has been so many highlights. And I mean, by all means, it's not been plain sailing, as you know. We've had difficulties, before Aurora was born. We had grief before Aurora was born. But I really think the difference now is that even within that grief, I knew I'd be okay. And I had hope that we would be able to have another baby. And even when I've had difficulties with jobs, I am going to be okay. Something else is going to come up. And that's a real shift, given in the past, everything has been catastrophized, and everything has been, how I've dealt with it has been with very, very poor coping mechanisms. It's very different now.
It's interesting as well, like listening to you and listening to what was the best year in 2016. The things that were good in 2016 were things, whereas it seems now what's good are feelings and emotions.
Yeah, so true. Yeah.
Which is not unusual for people, right?
Yeah, I guess with, in 2016, any opportunity that came my way, I grabbed it. I remember getting a charity place for London Marathon 12 weeks before the race itself.
Yeah.
They contacted me and said, someone's pulled out, you need to raise X amount of money, are you up for it? Okay, cool. And the reason I said yes was because it was my chosen charity, because at the time Dad had just recovered from bowel cancer, and it was Bowel Cancer UK, and I said, right, no, like absolutely, I'll get training then. And then another opportunity through my work of, we need someone to go to China for a few days. Who wants to go? Me, I'll go. And I think I just felt that year was it was a great year of me really just seizing opportunities and doing things. But unfortunately, the years that kind of were around it tended to be engulfed by poor decisions. Some, I put my hand up and say that there were a lot of decisions on my part that I made that were not the right decisions at all. And I suffered the consequences. Poor decisions in relationships, poor decisions with finances, with a lot of things. And yeah, but it's, as you say, it's you've picked up on that now when I think of great years, it's not about what race I ran or what, how much money that job has brought in or this or that. It's very much been, these years have been about building incredible relationships with different friends, with marrying Danny, with building a family. My relationship with my parents has also been the best it's ever been in these last few years, where we've always had a wonderful relationship, but sadly they have worried about me a lot of my 20s and 30s. Now I'm a parent. I feel for them that they have worried so much. And it's I love the fact that now we have the best relationship we've ever had.
Yeah.
And with my brother too.
That's nice.
Which has made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge.
We've all been through certain times, and some people talk about them as tough times. Some people talk about them as good challenges that came. And, we all have a story, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it's beautiful to talk today, to hear more of your story. And it's also amazing that you've given us the privilege to watch a lot of your story through being with us here. Do you ever look back and with regret?
Gosh, that's a good... I don't. And Danny and I talk about this a lot. We talk about the things that we wish hadn't happened in our life. He'll often say, I wish I hadn't done this, or I wish I hadn't made that decision. I wish I'd not been so poor to do this and that. And I say the same. But then when we talk about it, we remind each other that all of these poor decisions and all of these bad experiences have, as cheesy as it is, have brought us together. And I know that the two of us were meant to meet and be together. And we have married later than I would have loved to have married much younger. I would have loved to have had kids much younger. But I wouldn't change it for the world, because where I am is, well, I have this tattoo on my wrist that comes from what my dad said to me once. He said, life is not a rehearsal. This is where you're meant to be. And it's absolutely true, because I could have, made a different decision and married someone else much younger. I could have made a more sensible path of doing a certain thing. But I don't, when I think about where I am now and how happy we both are, and life isn't perfect, and life will never be perfect, but we're both in a place that we both want to be. And I think that is the most important thing, no matter how long it's taken to get there. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that how you've sort of phrased it is like happiness and perfection. Where do they coexist? Are they actually important, or are they dependent of one another?
Yeah.
Because Holly and I are super similar. Like we can sit in anywhere in the world, and for some people that might not be perfection, but if we're together doing something that we like doing, having a good conversation, if there's a nice view, it makes it a lot better. But it's like, is this perfect? Well, sometimes no. And we've stayed in some terrible hotels in the world, but we still had a great time. So what I'm saying here is our society or our preconception is often for perfection. But what's clear from what you've said and from the whole time we've been talking is actually our obsession is happiness and understanding happiness, which can take a while to figure out.
Absolutely. I mean, there's been different aspects of my life that I have strived to be perfect. I've got to eat perfectly, got to exercise perfectly, got to dress perfect. Everything it goes back to the initial dating conundrum in London and Dubai. You've got to look a certain way, got to be. And actually, you then comes back to, well, how many years of your life have you been happy?
That's a great question. That really is.
It was, I have to say, when this therapist back in Edinburgh asked me that question, I mean, and I'll be very open, I have, had quite a bit of therapy over my sort of 20s and 30s. Quite a lot of them have been pretty useless, I have to say. And she was incredible. She really drilled down to asking tough questions that I thought, wow, no one's ever asked me that before. And to then come out with going through it and thinking, oh gosh, you know what? It was pretty much only 2016. Oh. And it almost does make you really check yourself and think, hang on a second, like that's not right. We're not here to count on, like just how many years have you been happy? There should be happiness. There should be happiness and sadness in every year of some form. I think it very much did challenge me to think about, well, goes back to, if I'm to stay in Dubai, then what are the things that are going to make me happy? It's not necessarily going to be applying for a job that is going to earn me much more money and then all my problems will be solved and everything's going to be great. At the time, I didn't have a job. But it was like, well, okay, I'm going to apply and do this Project DXB and hope that that's going to work. Hope that that's going to, be the start of bigger things.
Yeah.
And it does. It just sort of it snowballs, because it's then you do that, and then you meet somebody else, and then through that you meet somebody else, and all of a sudden things start almost getting pieced together.
I have one more question that I wanted to ask you, but it might come to two or three. you have an ability, and I want this to come out in a good way. You have an ability to talk to people. Like, you like to talk. And that's what's not supposed to come out in the bad way. My question is, you always seem to have energy to talk to people. You always see, I know sometimes you sit in the cafe and I can see you're just working. And I know at the moment it's maybe a bit different because you've got Aurora and you've not been working so much. But I think on a general level, you'll always stop and talk to someone. And you'll always, from the outside, it always seems like you make time to talk to people. Have you ever noticed that?
My dad always says that I'm like my grandmother. He says, like, your granny would talk to anyone. And, you know, Danny always laughs when I say to him, oh, I did this today. I made a friend. And he's like, of course you did. Like, literally, of course you did. I wouldn't, it's whether I've been on a plane or at the hospital. And yeah, okay, of course you did, Jen. Yeah, made a friend. I find people genuinely really interesting, and in that initial getting to know that person. I think what I am learning to do more now is also just remind myself that when you're talking with people, it is also tiring.
Yeah,
it is tiring.
I'm trying to learn.
You know, it's tiring, and it can be emotionally draining if it's not the right conversation, if it's not done with the right intentions. And I still am guilty of saying yes to things and then thinking, that's an hour of my life I'll never get back. I should have rested. I should have learned to say no to that situation. And that's taking time. But I think by default, I do love people. But the funny thing is that I did this stupid little Instagram test thing yesterday. It was that this or that. So you know, mountains or beach and da-da-da-da-da. And one of them was introvert, extrovert. And I circled introvert. I still see myself as an introvert. I see myself as like a social introvert, where if plans get cancelled, I'm secretly excited.
Yeah, but
does that?
100%.
You know, like
100%.
you know, it's all right if we reschedule. And I'm thinking, yes, brilliant.
Even Holly, we'll plan to go out, and then we'll look at each other at like 4 and be like, should we just cook at home or put something on?
Yeah. And so, like, here's a good example. I'm not good in WhatsApp groups. I'm not good in...
That's a strength.
I hate, like, WhatsApp groups give me the, and some of my... And again, people that might be listening might giggle at this, because I am probably one of those observers on a WhatsApp group. I rarely contribute. I quite often have the groups... Sorry, guys, putting it out there on archive, because it for me, it gets too much. For me, having one-to-one conversation is so... That is how I'm so much better that way than in a group. I very much then go into myself, overthink about what I'm going to say. I also get very emotional, like very, very tired. I can't bring myself out of it. But I tend to have lots of energy when I'm with one person, and it's just swapping stories, bouncing ideas. And that's when you're meeting people, from the years ago when I did a lot on my own, meeting people in restaurants, planes, hotels. I love that sort of stuff. Yeah,
you're the girl that, if I'm in the right mood, if I'm sat next to on the airplane, I'm happy. And if not, I'm not happy. I hope that's a compliment, because you're just, your energy is amazing.
But I'd like to think that I can gauge from the other person whether they're up for conversation.
You've got a little bit of emotional awareness, right?
if the energy isn't the same, then you gauge, okay, you know what? Oh, absolutely. Like it can't. That's something that for me is so important, is that conversation is balanced. Again, it's a huge ick for me if I have a conversation or if I converse with someone and it is very one-sided. If it's talk at me and I can't say anything, or if they're asking constant questions, meaning that I have to do the most of the talking and that they're just extracting from. Yeah, it has to be balanced.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's because I always see you're always talking to someone, or you'll come into the coffee shop and hi, and there's no. It's actually something I'm trying to get a bit better at, because sometimes I'm like, I need to do this.
Yeah.
And I think we all have an agenda that we need to get done in a day, and we can't just sit around the whole time.
Yeah.
But you just seem to give people time unlimited. And I think it's...
So one of my careers in London was recruitment. Didn't work out. Right. Reason why... And I'm still in touch with my managers to this day, which, still good relationships, and they will absolutely agree. But I didn't make targets. Why did I not make my targets? Because I spent too much time with people. A candidate comes to me, I need to prepare for a job interview. Okay, you know what? Come in tomorrow. We'll do a full run through of the job interview and I'll give you a mock practice. And then I get pulled aside. What are you doing? You just give them a quick 5-minute rundown of what they need to do, move on to the next one, call someone else. Same with clients. I would want to, okay, well, why don't we explore this brand? And why don't we talk about how we could train? No, you're not doing it quick enough. And so there is a weakness in some respect, because I'm not as productive a person as maybe some other people can be, because I like getting into the...
But it goes back to what we were saying.
People.
Happiness to you is having a nice conversation, having connection with someone. That's what makes you happy. The time that you spend on those conversations, you could spend working, making X amount more, but that X amount more doesn't make you any happier. You know you're doing good, everything's okay, and you value that because you had a point in time where loneliness was a thing, and you realized you needed connection and community.
Yeah.
What a conversation. We could continue this the whole day and you probably never stop, but I don't want to take any more from you than I have to. But Jenny, from me, from everyone, we appreciate you. It's this was a long time coming, and then we had a small aurora in the final when we were supposed to do it. But no, it's a fantastic story, and I think about it a lot, and the various, because there are a lot of components, and we've tried to sort of get it into an hour, but there's a lot of components, and it's beautiful, and I'm so happy for you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
4 months on Zoom.
4 months on Zoom. Think about that one.
4 years later, I'll tell you something, you don't give up. Jenny, thank you so much.
Thank you.